but we are glad to welcome those of you who are here with us tonight. When we get done, for those of you who are treat eaters, we're going to do root beer floats. And for those that don't like root beer, I brought some Shasta orange if you want to make your own creamsicle in a cup. But we've set up some tables in the gym so we can go in there afterwards and sit and visit some more. We appreciate you being here. And again, hope that you just have fun and enjoy the evening together. We've asked Brother Lenny Goodwin to give us an opening and closing prayer all wrapped into one and a blessing on the food. So he's going to show us how that's done. And then we will turn the time over to Russ for his presentation.
I just have to make one comment.
Okay.
Having Russ here first is kind of like Neil Armstrong at a party. You hear everybody bragging about what they've done, and Neil Armstrong says, "Well, I've walked on the moon." Everybody goes, "Oh." Ryan Reagan did a shtick on that. If you're a fan of his. Anyway, Heavenly Father, we're so thankful as we come before Thee for this opportunity that we have to be at this activity tonight and to hear from Brother Blair. We pray that Thou will bless him with peace and confidence and with calmness as he shares the experiences that he can share and imparts to us the things that he has done during his naval career. We're so thankful for the gospel. It brings us all together. We're so thankful for one another and for the love that we share as brothers and sisters in the gospel. We pray Thy blessings upon this meeting. And then as we conclude, we ask Thee to bless the food that has been provided at the appropriate time, that it may be enjoyable to us, that we may mingle and express our friendship towards one another. And we say this humbly in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Okay, one last thing. You will notice when we go into the tables in the gym that the Relief Society did not do the setup. Elders Forum did. No centerpieces, no doilies, no decorations, just chairs and tables. Space close enough where you can talk to each other.
Okay. Well, I'm both humbled and flattered that anybody even came. So thank you, I guess. I was surprised when I was asked to do this. So I can go a number of different ways. It depends on what you want to do. I invite your questions throughout, please. I can geek out if you want to, or I can do other stuff, right? It just depends on what you guys would like to talk about. I wasn't quite sure what to share, so I have a little bit of everything. So I'll just begin at the end. This is my last day on active duty before I retired. So I was at my retirement ceremony. So I enlisted in the Navy in 1982, right out of high school. And so I had joined the church when I was 14 years old. And so my parents didn't go or anything like that. So my sister and I, we went with each other until we graduated from high school. And if you remember the early 80s at all, it was kind of a difficult time economically and that kind of thing. And I'd always known since I was very, very small that I wanted to do something in the armed forces. And I'd almost always known that I would probably be in the submarine force from watching movies like Run Silent, Run Deep and things like that. So I just kind of always knew that that's what I wanted to do. So I started to do that. So here's kind of the agenda, sort of the why, how, what. And then again, just different things depending on what you'd like to talk about. So August of 82, I joined. So what happened was over the summer, I couldn't find a job and I kept thinking about that, this desire that I'd had. And so I went down and I took the Armed Forces aptitude test and I did fairly well. So they said, hey, why don't you go do this? And I said, okay, I'll go do that. And then after a period of time, I became a midshipman, which I'll talk about more in just a second. So as a midshipman, basically, I was attending the University of Idaho, where I studied chemistry, physics, engineering, and math, and then got my commission in May of 1988. And along the way, met Peggy in August of 1986. And then served on active duty as a commissioned officer from 88 to 2013 and then retired. So I put an asterisk by the retired part because I'm not really retired because Peggy told me on September 2nd of 2013 that I couldn't stay at home. And so, and she promptly found me a job teaching high school.
Sure, Rankin, you retired.
I retired as a commander. I was a commander when I retired. So, I need to pay, I need to give credit up front. So it's, I guess it's my career. It's really our career, right? So nobody who's married and has a family and serves in the Navy really does it alone. So, every time I deployed or moved, she had to do that with me. When I was deployed at sea on deployment, then I called it deploying to single parenthood. And so she had to do all those kinds of things while I was gone, and usually without any contact from me at all, because I was radio silent and we couldn't talk to anybody. So she was truly out there doing it by herself. And so there's really no doubt who's in command at home, who's not. So anyway, so those pins represent most of the places, that I've been. You can kind of tell by where the pins are. That's where your Navy's at every day, right? That's what they're doing. If you think about it, it's all sort of the spots you read about in the world, right? Mediterranean, not so much now, but in the 90s, Bosnia, Herzegovina, right? All that kind of stuff, Yugoslavia, all that kind of stuff is happening in the Med, and of course in the Middle East. 5th Fleet, 7th Fleet, areas of responsibility, in the Atlantic. When I joined, we were still hot and heavy with the Soviet Union during the Cold War. So I did a lot of stuff in the Atlantic in that way early on. And then unfortunately the Cold War ended. And I say that kind of tongue in cheek because the world was a lot more a sane place, when we had the Soviet Union, if you think about it. There's a lot more chaos in the world just now. It's, I think things are a little bit easier to understand than they are today. But so anyway, and then other places, of course, I don't say that for dramatic purposes, but they told me I would go to prison for 75 years if I. Okay, so this is our picture from my enlisted nuclear power training graduating class. So I finished in April of 1984. While I was there, I'll give you a minute to see if you're trying to find me. While I was there, I did pretty well. I was at the top of my class. And they said, hey, we'd really like for you to think about earning your commission, becoming a nuclear trained officer instead. And I said, okay, I'll go do that. And so right after this picture was taken, I went off to go to college for 4 years. If I have a guess, right? No, Peggy,
Oh, yeah, back row on the right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Russ, is that in Florida? Yeah, so that's nuclear power school used to be in Orlando, Florida. So before, before the Cold War ended, and before BRAC, remember base realignment and closing commission, right? And basically it's politics, right? So, the senator from Florida says, yes, I'll vote on the defense appropriation bill, but I want you to build, a nuclear power school in Orlando. There's no really reason to build in Orlando, right? It's in the middle of Florida. Other than, somebody probably, anyway, how that works probably. So, but anyway, it's closed now. It's in Charleston, South Carolina. So that's where we are. Okay, so why would a normal person volunteer to confine themselves to a 36-foot wide steel tube that's 300 feet long, with 120 other smelly dudes for 7 months at a time? I'm going to show you some pictures. There really is absolutely no personal space whatsoever, right? Imagine living in your walk-in closet with your family, for 7 months or something like that, right? No sunlight for long periods, of course. I had the advantage, because I was an officer, I was standing watching the control. I could at least look out the periscope and see the sun from time to time. Nobody else knew where we were, though. So I always felt like the guys in engineering, the guys who just, do their job from day to day, they have absolutely no idea what the ship is doing. There's really like 12 people on board that actually know what we're doing at any given time. So I always gave those guys great credit for being able to do that.
How many on board?
About 120. We might have more than that if we're going to go on a
smelly dude. Sorry.
if we were going to go on a mission where we might require some intelligence specialists, maybe we're going to park SEALs or something, that number would go up.
There's no dudettes.
No, well, there wasn't then, there are now. No, I left, I got out, I retired before the first women were on submarines, but they are now. After about 7 days, all the fresh food is gone, right? And then, of course, we can't resupply at sea, so from that point, it's all canned and whatever, so. So basically, we put so much food on board that we have to walk on it for about 5 months before, as we sort of eat it down, because there's not enough storage space, right? So we put it on the floor and we're walking on number 10 cans, you know, for several months while we're
Like food storage in our home.
because once we deploy, you know, unlike a surface ship that could, you know, resupply at sea, if you've ever seen those pictures, you know, movies or something like that. You know, there's really no way to do that, and so we just.
How long were you gone at a time? I mean, like, on average,
Well, my longest deployment was 7 months.
I mean, you were at sea for 7 months.
Well, no, it was probably at sea for 6 of those 7 months. Right. They do give us the day off occasionally, not very much. And then we have this sort of strange watch rotation because there's a 3-section crew, right? So every 6 hours, the watch is going to rotate. So really on for 6 and off for 12 around the clock until you're done. And then we'll also, as soon as we shut the hatch, we'll probably shift the clocks to Zulu time. So that's Greenwich Mean Time. So you could go to periscope depth at noon local time. What you think is noon on your clock, right? And it's really midnight locally because you're in a different time zone. And the reason for that is just to synchronize communications and things like that, particularly if you're working with a distant commander, somebody like this, maybe in a different time zone, right? So it's kind of weird. You just do that, you know, that's your routine, okay? And the typical day for me was about 20 hours and then about 4 hours in the rack. And we're starting over again. So, and of course, you're surrounded by, you know, a hostile environment 24/7. You know, somebody makes a mistake, you know, everybody on board is dead. So we have there's a pretty strict qualification process that I'll talk about here in a minute. But basically, everybody on board, you know, if you can't hack it and you can't cut it, then we're not going to keep you, right? Because you're going to kill us, kind of thing, right? We'll send you to the surface fleet instead. That's true. Okay. You can never talk about where you did it or who you did it with. You know, I don't think Peggy really knows today anything at all about what we did. Do you? Do you have any idea?
Just from like where you call from, sometimes I knew.
We knew, yeah, maybe knew.
Which
Yeah.
Did you talk to her?
Well, only in port.
Only
Yeah,
important.
only in port, never underway.
And I wouldn't know, we wouldn't know about it. Or if we did know about it, it was, we, as wives, we'd all get pulled onto the base into a room and they'd give us some information, but like they would never gave information over the phone.
No, operational security was always a big deal because one of the primary benefits of the submarine is it's unlocated, right? And so you can't risk compromising.
But when you were in port, the enemy knew where you were
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they were watching you when you were in port. They knew where you were
Right.
at that point.
But as soon as we left, they would. And then, of course, just to make it all even better, you've got a 160 megawatt nuclear reactor strapped to your back. There you go. Right. Okay. All right. So the ethos of the submarine force is it's the silent service, right? And we want it to be that way, which is why you never really hear about us, even though we're out there doing the job every single day.
Can I back you up just a second?
Yeah.
With a question. This nuclear reactor, obviously, your education had to train you in the ins and outs of that. Tell me just briefly about what's involved with that.
Can you wait about 3 minutes?
Okay.
I'll do that. It's coming up. It's coming up. Yeah. Yes.
Did you always want to do something? I mean,
Yeah, I always did. Like even from a little,
The
even when I was small, I knew that I would do that.
water and stuff like that, that just was something that you were ready for right from the go.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
Okay.
And we have people who can't make it, right? And we just have to like say, sorry, you know, you're gonna have to leave.
You don't do it if you're claustrophobic.
No, it's a volunteer thing, right? So you don't volunteer, you know, if you don't, you pretty much self-select out, right?
Brother Blair. Brother Blair.
The single most powerful and most.
You have a little voice, you have to speak up.
Mobile platform, weapons platform,
Yeah, you'll never see it, yeah.
that you'll never, oh, okay.
Yeah. People think like the B1 is the original stealth, but it's not, right? That's the original stealth platform.
The question right here,
How realistic is the hunt for Red October to what you did?
It involves submarines, something.
What's that?
It involves submarines. Yeah, it probably ends right about
he
there.
had special access, didn't
So that movie came out during my first tour. It was kind of like for the submarine force what Top Gun was for naval air, right? And so, and it's probably about as accurate. Yeah.
Which had better actors in it? Top Gun or Hunt for Red October?
So, you know, our ethos, again, our motto is right there are two kinds of ships, right? There are submarines and targets. And so here's kind of part of the mentality that I always had, right? It's like, there's something uniquely satisfying about being able to approach your enemy undetected and have them in your crosshairs and knowing you can squeeze the trigger at any moment and release four of the most capable anti-ship weapons ever invented and just kind of ruin their day. Right?
That's about him.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So, you know, these are US carriers on the bottom. We would do this occasionally and then just kind of email a picture to the ship and let them know that you didn't buy. Because they would have no idea.
The bottom ones are not on target, but the top ones are.
What do you mean?
Crosshairs.
Yeah, you put the crosshairs on the ship.
Yeah, so they put the reticule off it's called a reticule off the picture, so you can see the image uncluttered, right? But you know, it's pretty, we just take bearing and range, right? It's kind of like run center and deep, but a lot more complex now with a better weapon.
So their sonar did not pick you up.
Well, the aircraft carrier doesn't have any sonar at all, right? It's a moving airport, right? It's too
So the
loud.
destroyer escort.
Yeah, so the screening escorts kind of, but which is, and that's why it's so unfair, right? But it's okay. Because even the best surface ship sonar is always going to be at a disadvantage. To some degree. You know, I've got a weapon that I can shoot from 15 miles away if I had to. Okay, so submarine officers, qualified submarine. So the submarine dolphins represent. It's the first in the Navy that the pin that represents your specialty, right? It's the first one the Navy ever had. I think just kind of recognize sort of the weird people that would have to do that kind of thing. Submarine is the most technologically complex machines ever built. We're talking 4,000-pound air systems, 3,000-pound hydraulic systems, nuclear power plants, inertial navigation systems. Well, I mean, it's just a complex machine.
Fitting in 30 feet around and 300 feet long, including a nuclear reactor, right?
Yeah. Most of the ship is actually the engineering department. So submarine officers, about 10% of commissioned officers, and in total about 1.6% of the total Navy manpower. So we're a pretty small and unique group. Like I said, all volunteer. We tend to be the most highly paid because it takes kind of weird, stupid, crazy people, right, to go and do that. Plus, you have to be reasonably intelligent. I was attracted to the submarine force because the people tended to be, I call it wicked smart, right? Resourceful and sneaky kind of people. Because if I'm going to go do this, I'm going to be around people who aren't stupid. It's just so why submarines? This is kind of what always intrigued me. During the Second World War, U.S. submarines destroyed about over 1,300 of enemy warships in the Pacific alone, which represented more than half of all Axis warships that were destroyed. In addition, about 5.3 million tons of shipping. But that came with the loss of 52 U.S. submarines over the course of the war, resulting in the highest percentage casualty rate of any specialty in the armed forces during the war. So you're your odds of survival in the submarine force during the Second World War were the lowest.
They weren't good.
Yeah, they weren't good. So submarine ops, kind of getting to your question, right? Technically hold a degree in math, engineering, physics, or chemistry, or some other technical area. And then to enter the program, I had to go to Naval Reactors, take a 3 or 4 hour exam and some oral interviews. And then I got interviewed by Admiral McKee to see if I would be accepted into the program. And the only thing he asked me was, why did my wife work while I was going to college? It was a weird, I'm like, oh, I don't know. And he said, okay, Blair, we'll give you a shot, and stamped a piece of paper, and I was done, right? That was the extent of my interview.
Did it make you question the people you were gonna be with?
No, because Rickover was much more interesting.
Really?
Okay, so this is a top-down view of Orlando. It doesn't exist anymore. It was shut down in the 90s because of the BRAC. But here, yeah, that's what we studied, right? So we studied calculus, thermodynamics, heat transfer, fluid flow, nuclear physics, reactor physics, all those kinds of stuff, right? To be able to operate. So the way it works is you go to school for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, and then you put in about 30 to 40 hours in addition to that for 6 months. And that's the equivalent of about a year and a half of postgraduate nuclear engineering training. So we did that in Orlando from July of '88-ish. Peggy was about 10 months pregnant when we moved. And, our first son was born the day before I had a 3 hour heat transfer and fluid flow final. And I was not a very good dad at that point. This is a absurdly stupid and wrong picture, right? Of a nuclear propulsion plant. It sort of gives you the idea, right? The reactor generates hot water, essentially. It's not steam, it's just hot water, so it's pressurized, but then that gets turned into hot water and the steam generated through a heat transfer system. Think about like a radiator in your car kind of thing, right? But more complicated. Which produces steam and then turns 2 turbines for electrical power and then a large main engine turbine. And there's a battery and things like that. So eventually you turn the screw and go around and produce electricity and things like that. Then we went to the Idaho National Engineering Laboratory, where I was a student at the S1W reactor prototype for 6 months. So this was like the hands-on part. We learned how to do the actual operation of the plant. So there I had to take another 4 hour written test and a 3 hour oral exam to be qualified and be able to go on.
What year were you there?
So we were there
End of '88.
in December of '88 to
You were there when I was there.
well, you were there.
I retired from Bettis Atomic Power.
Okay. Yeah, I was the last class to go through S1W before they shut it down. S1W prototype is the Nautilus reactor, right? So it was very kind of passionate. It was an interesting. They learned a lot from the Nautilus. Yeah. So I was the last class to graduate from the S1W prototype before they shut it down.
So the nuclear power plant you have on the submarine, just, man, how much of a city would that power, just to give us some kind of an idea? Or
I don't know, because I don't know how much power a city uses. I have no idea.
How many megawatts does it?
I can't tell you.
You'd have to kill you.
Yeah.
Look it up on Google.
If you look it up on Google.
Yeah.
It's enough, right? So I don't know. I don't know. I really don't.
How does the reactor on it compare to the reactor on like the USS Ronald Reagan?
Smaller,
How much smaller? Half?
more probably. I think the carriers have 2 essentially reactors now. Enterprise had 8, but that was a maintenance, nightmare, right? So I think they have 2 now, but they're much bigger, like 100,000 tons versus 6. Right?
I remember when we were in California, the city of San Diego was asking to hook to that reactor for the ground.
Oh yeah, that's right. I remember. Yeah, they were gonna do. Yeah. I think it sounds like a lot, and it is, but I think cities use a lot. So I don't, that's a good question. How much does Santa Clara use? I have no idea. Okay. So there are basic submarine design. It's not very sexy from the outside, It is designed to basically be hydrodynamically efficient. So there's not a lot of external projections or anything really that would cause noise as the ship moves through the water. So basically it flies like an aircraft, except water is a much denser fluid medium, so we don't need wings nearly as big as an aircraft does, right? So basically the hull itself acts as the wing surface, if you like. And then the plane surfaces are used to control depth. Right, so if you want to go up, you pull back on the yoke. If you want to go down, you push forward. Kind of thing. Just like you would in an aircraft. So I call it flying underwater. It's just a denser fluid medium than say airworthy.
So are the forward planes, is that what keeps it? Because a tube, you'd think it would want to do this as it's, under there. Do those keep it like in a level surface or?
No, I mean, the ship's ballasted, right? To be
going
be
straight.
stable, right?
Okay.
So the thing that's unique about a submarine is it has positive and negative buoyancy, right? So on the surface, we're going to
Is that like an elevator in an airplane?
No, that would be like the stern planes in the back, if you like. Yeah. These are the forward bow planes are really more for kind of fine tuning. Yeah. The rudder, of course, would change just like the rudder on an aircraft. But because water is so much denser than air, the moving hull itself creates, plus we can trim the ship to be neutrally buoyant so I can stay in the same place with no motion at all. If we had to.
The cost to build one of those compared with an aircraft carrier, are they a lot more money?
No, aircraft carriers are pretty pricey. I don't know in today's dollar. I want to say a Virginia class is probably in the $1 billion range.
They're billions though, right?
Yeah.
Do aircraft carriers have nuclear reactors on them?
Yeah.
Because that's how they're
all
all their
nuclear.
power.
Yeah.
Interesting to note, the first aircraft carrier, their Enterprise, had 6 reactors in it.
I think it had 8.
With 8?
Yeah. Because early, right, they had a power plant with a given power, right? So, think Cold War, right? We need to get this thing in the water. So we're going to take 8 of these power plants, which are basically submarine power plants. We're going to stick them in the ship, but then that creates a downstream maintenance nightmare.
How long were they fueled for when the reactor is refueled?
Well, I think in the early days, we used to refuel quite frequently, maybe 2 or 3 times for the life of the ship. But today, the core is going to pretty much last the life of the ship.
But it's months. They can go for months underwater.
Oh yeah, the ship will go longer than me.
The Virginia said it had a lifespan of like 35 years for its reactor.
Yeah, so we've gotten much better with the technology, so we can build a core now that essentially doesn't have to be replaced because the cost of refueling is pricey. Yeah. So different missions, anti-surface warfare. So think, World War II, runs on that kind of stuff, right? The best anti-submarine platform is another submarine. So this was what we did a lot of during the Cold War. We would go out and find Soviets, right, and just be ready to do whatever needed to be done if things went bad.
You would trail cat and mouse.
I can't, yeah.
Don't sue me.
You said it, not me.
Would they do crazy Ivans?
Yeah, that's a real thing.
That's awesome.
The other thing you probably hear about so much is intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, right? So again, the submarine's original stealth platform. So if you can park a long dwell intelligence gathering platform off the coast of country bad, right? Then there's a lot that can be done with that. Special warfare, working with SEALs, strike warfare. We seem to be out of our Tomahawk diplomacy phase that we were in for a while. We were launching Tomahawks like they were candy. But can certainly do that. And then deploying as a member of a battle group or carrier strike group. Done that before too. Okay, so we mentioned types, fast attack submarines. So these guys are basically, I think they're the orcas of the whale community, right? They're hunter killers kind of things, right? Their job is to go out and find other submarines, primary mission, ships, and of course, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. So I served on 2 of those, Santa Fe and Oklahoma City. And there's some stats, right? I think you can sort of get an idea of scale because this would be like underway on the surface. Some of the pictures on the table there, actually all of them are, I'm actually the conning officer in the tower at the top there for each of those. So, yeah. Dry dock view, again, so pretty clean, not a lot to see from the outside. That's a Seawolf class electric boat in Broad, Connecticut, which is I think the largest fast attack we have in the fleet right now. That looks like a 688. Okay, so no wasted space, sonar, vertical launch weapon system, torpedo room, okay, living spaces, sonar, radio, those kinds of things, torpedo room in the bottom. The auxiliary machinery room where the diesel's at, in case we have an emergency diesel, in case the reactor is shut down, we can power the ship with the diesel. Control room, and then everything back here would be engineering.
What's the most dangerous job on a submarine? The guy who changes the fuel,
Yeah, cook.
cleans the inside of the reactor.
The kitchen can't be very big in that thing. You got hot stuff around you though.
The guy who burnt dinner. No, I think it all carries the same risk because one valve opened inappropriately, right? And you're gonna kill everybody. I don't know the one at any one time was any more particularly dangerous than the other. Second type is a ballistic missile submarine. So if you remember during the Cold War, they had this thing called the Triad, right? I think what was that movie they made in the 80s, right? So you had the air wing part, right? The B-52s, right? They were going to somehow survive flying over the Arctic Circle and Russian SAMs, right? Which was never really going to happen. Then you had the Air Force guys with ascots sitting in holes in the ground in Wyoming and Montana, right? Of course, we know where those are, so the first bombs are landing there, right? And then there was the most survivable leg, which was the at-sea deterrent leg, which was your ballistic missile submarines. So the Ohio class is the current fleet ballistic missile submarine. It's quite a bit bigger than a fast attack, 560 feet, 42 feet long. Why? Because we're carrying 24 Trident II, D5 missiles in the back there, right? So its primary mission is not to go out and find other things, it's to go out and get lost, right? Well, they're not lost, right?
Yeah, actually have 24 missile tubes, like each one holds one missile that it's on. Yeah, okay. You're gonna like reload missile tubes.
Well, no, I mean, not at sea anyway.
All right.
Right. So there's a picture of the Trident 2D5.
So do you launch underwater?
Yeah.
And then, oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so there's a gas generator that creates a lot of gas, right? Essentially, and expels the weapon, essentially like the gas from gunpowder expels the bullet from.
Oh, so it's in a bubble going up.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and it has enough inertia that it broaches the water. Then there's a sensor inside the rocket motor that says, "Okay, I'm no longer accelerating upwards. I better turn the motor." And then it starts flying.
That's cool.
Yeah, so there's one just leaving the water surface. Right? So on the business end, there are 8 multiple independent reentry vehicles. So you can do the math and figure out how many weapons. Of course, that was hopefully never had to do, but I mean they call it mad, right? Mutually assured it worked, right? Worked hard. Well, yeah, I don't know that we really believe in it anymore. I don't
And that's just from one warhead there in the bottom there. So you've got 8 going
Oh, yeah.
multiple places in, let's say Moscow or something. I'm using that as an example. You could do the east side, the west side, the north side, Kremlin, whatever. Yeah. I mean, because each of those are individually steerable.
What?
It's Utah.
Utah, right?
It's not in July.
I think it's in bad. I'm pretty sure. Okay, and then, when, as part of the STAR Treaty, we had to decommission from strategic use 2 of the Ohio class ballistic missile submarines, so they repurposed them as SSGNs. So they took out the 24 Trident missiles and replaced them with 154 Tomahawks. So there's essentially each one of those tubes now contains multiple Tomahawks instead, and they also configure it to carry large numbers of these guys, right, and some of their equipment. So we have 2 of these that are operating right now also. So that's pretty capable. 154 Tomahawks, right? That's good. So the
Those are
advantage,
just little submarines, aren't they?
what's that?
The special warfare vehicles.
Yeah, so this is little mini sub, right? So we're gonna sit off the coast and they're gonna launch and go in and cause mayhem. Whatever.
It's a good thing to have the 154 in your tubes. It's a bad thing for the receiving end of those, right?
Yeah, I mean, so when Kim Jong-un gets frisky in North Korea, we just kind of park one of these off the coast and kind of let it know, hey, just think about it, right? Okay. So this is sort of the geeky part. You tell me when you've had enough, right? So how on earth do we know what the environment is? It's entirely acoustic. Okay. So at the front of the ship is a sonar sphere, and then sonar sphere, every one of those you see is a hydrophone, right? So every one of those hydrophones is essentially a microphone. It's not even a microphone, right? It's essentially a listening, right? For sound. And so every one of those creates an azimuth and a bearing and a DE of some sound energy, right? And so then down the side of the ship, there are additional called wide aperture array or flank array sonars. And then we can also tow an additional sonar behind us. Right? So in this way, there are no baffles, right? We're hearing the acoustic environment, 360 degrees. So sonar is pretty important. Of course, this is a picture of a sonar shack on a U.S. submarine. So what you're looking at there is because our ears don't really process sound very well, we see things much better than we hear them. The sonar system essentially translates that acoustic energy into visual imagery, right? In the form of a waterfall or cascading display of time versus bearing and essentially SNR, signal to noise ratio, right? Okay, so these guys are doing that. And then as the conning officer, I'm steering the ship by this, right? This is my picture of the world that I'm steering the ship by. So I know where things are.
18 hours a day.
No, a watch would be 6 hours, right? I would be doing other stuff for that one. So there are a number of displays here. We call it, this would be like a short time averaging. So this waterfall display is relatively quick. Then we're starting to see different depression elevation angles from the spherical array. So sound does weird stuff underwater. It doesn't travel like it does. So it bends, it tends to turn, right? It does weird things based on pressure, salinity, and temperature. And so just because you hear something here doesn't mean that it's really there. And so of course, just because you can hear it doesn't mean you know how far away it is, right? So the big problem is figuring out range from bearing only. So
That's kind of like a car. When I'm in the driver's seat, it sounds like it's over there, but if you're in the passenger seat, it sounds over there. Is that what you're telling me, Russ? You and I are kind of the same.
Yeah. You can drive with steel on your windshield.
Just a more expensive car.
yeah. So if I'm conning the ship, the white triangle represents my heading. So it looks like I'm going pretty much almost due south here. Right? So now based on angle from the left or right of the bow of the ship, right? I can see where acoustic energy is, like there's something happening right here. It looks like it's in the upper DEs because it gets weaker in the lower DEs. You can see we're changing bearing with regards to some of these because the bearing is changing over the course of time. So we can figure out things like range by analyzing that.
Looks like you're looking at the matrix there. It's not like me. We can't understand that, but you can see it. Simple, interesting.
Yeah, so it takes a bit of practice.
Yeah.
But that's how we understand what's going on around this. This would be called passive broadband. This would be, say, passive narrowband. So the narrowband would be looking at specific frequencies or tonal information. So for example, your house is powered with 60 hertz electricity. So any rotating machine in your house rotates at 60 hertz. So if I can hear rotating machinery at 60 hertz, then I know there's something out there. There's something man-made, right? That's creating that rotating 60 hertz frequency. Of course, the Soviets didn't use 60 hertz, right? They might use 50 instead. But you could be gears, could be anything, right? Any sort of rotating kind of thing would create that kind of information. Periscope, 2 of those. People think the periscope looks like a little window, but it doesn't look like that anymore. It's really kind of a complex sensor now. It's not just a visual picture. I got detectors in there for electromagnetic radiation. I've got a radio antenna in there. I may have a radar in there. I've got infrared in there. I've got low light in there. I've got all kinds of stuff in there, right?
Was the main reason for 2 for redundancy?
Yeah.
Because that's your only eye to the outside,
Yeah,
isn't
I'm
it?
really only going to put up one at a time, right? And this is about probably 4 feet of scope. Right. So, but anytime you put the scope up, right, you're risking counter detection. So you have to be smart about it. You can see the 2 scopes right here up at the same time. So yeah, it looks just like you think it would look like. Then we take all the information and feed it into a fire control system that's basically going to create a targeting solution that we can feed to a weapon. Okay, ship control, so this would be like the cockpit, right? Okay, so these guys would be like pilot and co-pilot. That's called the diving officer. His job is to make sure these guys are doing their job as well as to keep the ship ballasted to be neutrally buoyant. Which is kind of a big job because as I change depth, the hull compresses and changes Archimedes principle, right? So it changes the volume of water displaced. So I have to constantly account for that and maybe bring on or take off water to keep the ship neutrally buoyant. Also, the temperature of the water changes. Say it's cold and it gets warm, and all of a sudden I'm sinking, right? Because I'm heavier than I used to be. So you got to figure out that. This guy's called the chief of the watch. His job is to move water, air, and hydraulics and do all that other kind of stuff, basically to support the diving officer.
Russ, why do they have 2 hands on the steering wheel? Do they have to do that?
Yeah. Yeah, you're not cruising Maine, right? You're gonna have 2 hands on it. Mostly if there was a hydraulic casualty or something like that, and something, happened with the ability to control that particular planing surface, right? So you need, yeah. So they should always have 2 hands. Good point. Yeah. Okay. Any questions? Yeah.
Do you have the equivalent of a flight recorder in the ships?
No, we have a quartermaster who keeps a log.
Really?
Yeah.
So there's no black box. Wow.
Not that I know of. Okay, so how do you know where you are underwater, right? And imagine taping black paper all around the windows on your car and driving to Cedar and trying to figure out how to get there, right? So how are you going to do that? Well, your quartermaster is going to be using a chart, and basically you're going to use dead reckoning, or which we also have an inertial navigation system that's going to tell us our latitude and longitude and velocity, so that we can essentially use vectors, right? the dead reckon where we are. So imagine, trying to leave the parking lot and figuring out, okay, I've traveled 60 feet, it's time to turn right. And then just using a compass, well, not a compass, but a gyroscope essentially to know where you're at. So we use like a ring laser gyro, so it's much better. It doesn't have any moving parts. So basically, or an electrostatic gyro navigator, which has a beryllium ball that spins at 60,000 revolutions per minute. And that's what keeps the gimbal platform stable.
With all the sonar capacities that you have, there's no chance you're gonna run into a mountain or something down there.
Well, we've proven that's not true. Yeah, bad navigating will result in, I think, San Francisco, right? How do you hit a mountain going flank? Well, it's because you don't know where you are. You're not paying attention. So the sonar is not really going to help me navigationally. It's going to be how precise is my inertial navigation system? How well is this guy doing his job? And how well are people doing, counting officer doing his job to make sure that we know where the ship is, where we think it is. Now, over time, between an external fix from, say, GPS, we're going to have a growing circle of uncertainty, we would call it, right? And we have to assume the ship is anywhere inside that growing circle of uncertainty until we can reset our position back. And then that circle will grow again based on time and speed and things like that. Does that make sense? So
How are you, or what's your oxygen supply? How long is that?
So seawater is our oxygen supply, right? Well, not seawater, I should say distilled water. So we're going to make our own water. Then we're going to use electrolysis. We're going to pass about 10,000 volts of current through water. We're going to separate hydrogen from oxygen, keep the oxygen and get rid of the hydrogen.
You never get stuck on the bottom and you only got 8 hours of oxygen.
Well, I hope not. Plus, we're going to store it in some tanks too, right? So we'll have this for the time when the oxygen generator may not be. The oxygen generator is probably the scariest piece of equipment on the entire ship because it's basically a bomb. Right, we're passing high voltage current through water, creating hydrogen and oxygen. Right? What does that sound like to you?
Where do you expel hydrogen?
Yeah. So, yeah, that's probably, whoever asked what the most dangerous thing was, that's probably it. Okay. Weapons, this is a picture of the torpedo room. If I was standing here, right here, my head would be touching that. So there are 2 platforms there. Each one of those is each torpedo weighs about 3,000 pounds. It would carry 20 or 24, it depends on the loadout. There are 4 torpedo tubes. They're actually angled, so they go around the sonar dome, so we don't go straight out the front, off the side. Here's the guy inside one of the tubes. So maybe that's the most dangerous part. Because he's one valve away, right, from being in the water.
So it used to be in the old plane movies. You just launched the torpedo and it would go straight and hit something, right? But now these have a different guidance system.
No, this is a smart weapon, and it has a wire. I can steer it from the ship.
Oh, really?
Has a wire,
Yeah.
so it's remote.
Yeah, this is a wire canister, right? So this canister is going to remain in the torpedo tube, and the wire is going to play out from the tube, from the canister, right? But I can talk to the weapon through the wire from the fire control system.
While it's going.
Yeah.
How long is the wire?
It's long enough. You won't run out.
So besides guiding it by wire, you don't have anything that like locks onto a target or anything, or?
Well, the weapon will go active eventually, right?
Yeah.
And then it's going to use its own active sonar to prosecute the target. My job is to put it in the best place to do that.
And away from you.
Yeah.
You're the target.
Right. I mean, ideally, I'd like to have it enable, go active, right? As close to the target as possible.
Right.
But remember, water is funny stuff, right? So it's fairly complicated. So no, it's not just a matter of shooting straight, but those guys, they engage from 300 yards, right? I want to engage from 10,000. Right, that's what I want to do. Right.
That's why our wire is so expensive.
So these are the current Navy torpedoes. The top three are all air or surface ship launched weapons. So you can see why ours is the big hit on the top. It's an interesting weapon. It's designed basically to explode underneath the keel of the ship, and by exploding under the keel, it never actually hits the ship directly, but it evacuates all the water from under the keel, and then the ship breaks its back because it's no longer supported by the water. So in that way, you can essentially sink a ship with a single weapon. Yes.
So how do we compare with the enemy? Do we know, of the United States, do we know what Russia has and China has and Korea?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of what we're trying to figure out, right? Like guys like what I used to do, right? Gonna go out, they're trying to. So when other navies are exercising or using the, we might be around, to see what that looks like. I mean, I think ours is probably the most capable weapon, but it's been a minute since I was in that kind of.
The Russian Navy only has one aircraft carrier.
Yeah, that's probably not operational.
So with the advances in technology, are there any new technologies that pose more significant threat to submarines, like drones or anything like that?
I don't know about drones so much. I mean, I think there are rocket launched torpedoes, right? Essentially create an air bubble around it. So basically it shoots out at like several hundred miles per hour. So, but it doesn't hear anything, right? You gotta be pretty certain, where it's gonna go. I think, surface ship sonars are certainly capable, right? Depending again on the acoustic environment could be challenging. I think, but I think if anything we've seen, I mean, ask the Russians how the Moscow, went with drones, right? Obviously drones are a new factor for some platforms. So again, I never wanted to be one of those guys, right? Because targets, they're targets, right? All right, so, and of course the land attack Tomahawk. So it'd be our standoff, ocean to shore kind of weapon. 80% of the world's population lives within the range of the Tomahawk, launched from sea.
What is the range?
Oh, I don't know. I do. I don't know. That's true. You can say that. So it's,
Well, I know they were launching them to Baghdad from out in the ocean, so that's a long ways.
Yeah, it's a long ways.
Yeah. You could hit Montana from here.
Yeah.
If this was the ocean.
It's a fairly sophisticated weapon. You can see the scope is up here. 1,000 miles. Fairly precise weapon. Okay. Living on board, this would be cruise berthing. So there are three, we would call them racks, right? There are 3 racks there. It's about 20 inches or so. I think top and bottom, let's say maybe 24.
Did you have to share a bunk? Not you, but
no, I
sleep in shifts.
No, people did. We call it hot racking, right? So 2 people would share 3 racks because we're in that 3 watch rotation, right? Yeah. So you would hop into one of those 3. No, sorry, 3 people would share 2. 3 people would share 2. Right. This would be an officer's stateroom. So there are 3. We would never share, but there would be 3 racks. And this would be like your workspace. So probably about the size of, I don't know, a small closet. Right.
Your quarters were 11 minutes.
No, that was mine.
That's commander.
Oh, no, I need to clarify probably, because I was the commander of the submarine board, didn't mean I actually commanded a submarine, right? It's just a rank. Right? Probably clarify that. So I was an executive officer and then I went off to do stuff in the carrier Navy for a while. So it gets, so the Navy ranks are confusing in that way. So this is a good picture of the middle level passageway on a Los Angeles class submarine. So again, I liked it because you can see the, for point of reference, you can see the guy standing there. So if I was walking down this passageway, and it may even still have some of my hair stuck in the screws holding those light covers in place.
Let me ask you a question. Is this class still in use?
Oh, yeah, it's still the backbone of.
So are these unclassified pictures we're watching, or do we have to forget that we saw them or what?
We're not allowed to have cameras. I have like no pictures of myself, right?
Yeah.
Because we were never allowed to have cameras. I just found these on Google. So I'm guessing it's okay. There's nothing classifying this picture. So the torpedo room for point of reference is below this deck, and above this deck is forward compartment upper level. So these deck plates would all come up and we would load weapons by lowering them down that way. So he's walking aft towards cruise mills and the wardroom. There's the wardroom. So typically 12 officers on board. Those were all geeks. These are all the reactor plant manuals. Just so we can do engineering stuff. And then there's a, okay, this would be cruise now. 688. We're gonna eat in shifts, 3 shifts, probably 4 times a day. So every 6 hours there's a meeting. Because we're rotating every 6.
Anybody taller than you in there?
No,
Dave Foster couldn't get in there.
no, he probably, no, he would be unhappy. Okay. Okay, so my specific assignments, I feel like I'm dragging. So my first ship was the USS Benjamin Franklin, SSBN 640 from 89 to 92. So on that ship, I was a communications officer, and I was also the chemistry and rheological controls officer. And that was a little bit older SSBN, so we only carried Trident or 16 Tridents instead of 24. So our mission there was to go out and do strategic deterrence again. So I was out of Charleston, South Carolina. So interesting story. Hurricane Hugo. So I was finishing up submarine school, and my wife Peggy had gone to Charleston early, right, to get our house. And Hurricane Hugo, I think, literally hit like 48 hours after she got there. And I was still up in Groton, Connecticut, and I was graduating on Friday. And we knew the hurricane was going to hit over the weekend or Friday night, something like that. Do you remember? And so I had asked to be able to leave early, but they told me I had to go to graduation. So the moment graduation ended, I left and drove south. But as soon as I hit South Carolina and North Carolina, where the hurricane had hit, every street sign was gone. And this is sort of pre-GPS, right? So I have no idea. So I'm using an atlas and trying to guess by geography, basically. Well, here's kind of a weird intersection, so maybe that's the one I just passed. Eventually I was able to find her without any phone or power or anything. So we left for Disneyland for 2 weeks. So yeah, so she went through Hurricane Hugo by herself, but well, 1.5 kids, right? 1.8. 1.8 kids. Some obvious early.
Wait, you had a mustache?
Yeah. So we didn't have to shave once we got underway, so it was a failed experiment, though, obviously. Not doing it. Then we went to USS Santa Fe, so we moved from Charleston to Groton, Connecticut. We were there for 2 years. There I was the main propulsion assistant. So I was out of Groton, Connecticut, and that was a new construction ship. So I was part of the initial building crew. So I was actually the initial criticality entering also the watch, and I was actually the first one to submerge the ship and that kind of thing. So that was pretty fun doing that. So this is more Santa Fe stuff. And that's how I got to be in this picture up there at the top. Santa Fe is in Hawaii now. It's out of Honolulu, Pearl Harbor. This is actually the radar, right? So I've always been curious as to how much microwave energy my brain has endured because of the surface radar.
The surface radar microwave.
I think all radars are in the microwave region, I believe. Which I think it's kind of interesting, right? That's how they discovered microwaves cook stuff, right? Because one of the guys working on radars melted a chocolate bar in his pocket. Like, how did that happen? I think that's the story.
Yeah, cell towers we work on, they have square tubes, they send radar through it or
Yeah.
microwaves through it.
Yeah, it's the wave guys, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I think they're the right, at least I'm pretty sure that was in the microwave band. This was the initial launching picture of Santa Fe again. So first time the ship's in the water, we're going backwards down the way. I think I'm standing like that.
In the middle of winter, freezing cold,
So,
and we were all hoping it would float. So our fingers were crossed.
yeah.
Then you bring it back in and get rid of all that shiny glitzy paint for the manufacturer, or?
No, this is, so the red paint below the water line, that's temporary, right? We're gonna cover that up later on with black.
He's talking about the front, isn't
The
it?
front, is that just a wrap?
No, that's just a wrap, right?
Okay.
Yeah, it just is like wrapped around, yeah. Then we went to, USS Georgia, right? Yeah. So there was the navigator and the operations officer. Nice thing about the Georgia is we could submerge right off the pier and then drive all the way out to the ocean if you want. So, you can see the air venting from the bow things. Peggy got to go on with this. Didn't like it. Okay. Then we went to Oklahoma City. So I reported on board Oklahoma City on September 11th, 2001, literally. So as I was saying, I relieve you to the executive officer, I watched the planes fly into the Twin Towers. So we deployed about 30 seconds later. Well, a little bit longer than that. We had some things to do first, but so we deployed from Norfolk, Virginia to Fifth Fleet. So it basically went through the Straits of Gibraltar, went through the Suez Canal, which is an interesting experience. So you park out here for a minute and then you embark the canal pilot, but then you've got to give him his bribe before he'll take you through the Suez Canal. And then the Suez Canal is it's really just a series of lakes that are connected by a canal, right? So the Great Bitter and Lower Bitter Lakes, and then you end up here at the top of the Red Sea, drive out through the Straits of Bab el-Mandeb, past Yemen and Somalia, and then just kind of cruise around the corner here through the Straits of Hormuz into the Gulf. And this is, I believe, us pulling into Bahrain. So Bahrain.
Did you see any leftovers of Pharaoh's army when you went through the Red Sea?
I didn't know, we would have heard them, but we would. No, I didn't see them. So this whole time, this is when I was deployed for 7 months, and we did things all over in here. What we were essentially trying to do was what we were tracking Osama bin Laden during this time, trying to figure out a way to make him pay. So and other things as well. We were also shooting a lot of tomahawks during this time. This just I think this is in Crete. Greece, maybe. No, maybe Italy. Anyway, so and then so this was my stateroom when I was the executive officer. So I had a little bit more space. And yeah, then I went on to carrier strike group stuff with the Kodiak strike group. So we moved to Japan. We did that twice. So we lived in Japan for a total of 4 years. Where I was the submarine and then the plans and operations officer. And we deployed the Western Pacific a lot. Right? Peggy says that she and the kids lived in Japan. I lived on the Kodiak, and that's true. I think I was gone about 280 days a year, something like that.
And that was shorted.
And that wasn't my short. Yeah. Okay. So the fun thing here was we got underway once just to go do a 2-week exercise in Guam, and then if you remember, something happened with Bosnia, right, the little Bosnian thing, right? So the Nimitz, who was supposed to go to the Persian Gulf, got redirected to Bosnia, so we had to go fill the Nimitz's place in the Persian Gulf. So we had an unexpected 6-month deployment to the Persian Gulf that we weren't planning on. So, yeah. So carrier strike groups, very, very different, very interesting creatures. It's all about the air wing, right? The carrier is just a floating airport. It really only exists to embark the air wing, which is the weapons system, like the weapons platform. And then it's essentially protected by a combination of cruisers and destroyers. So you want to understand what carrier strike groups do. They go where the Air Force can't, right? I mean that in the best possible way. So, you know, if the Air Force wanted to fly a mission, you know, say, and I've seen Air Force guys fly all the way from Missouri, right, to do a mission in 7th Fleet, right? So they'll fly for, you know, 32 hours or something insane, right, to go do that. And then so, but we can park an aircraft carrier off North Korea and accomplish, you know, the same thing. So there's 7th Fleet and 5th Fleet. These are the two that I spent most of my time in. 5th Fleet is everything Middle East, right? From basically India all the way over to Egypt. And then 7th Fleet is everything from here all the way to Hawaii. So 7th Fleet is very large. Well, I was there as the lead maritime exercise planner, which is kind of weird for a submarine officer to be planning carrier strike group exercises, but I did it for an exercise called Valiant Shield 06, which involved 3 carrier strike groups. They flew B-2s all the way from Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri to Guam, right, to do this exercise. And you can see some F-18s from the embarked air wing here. So this photo was probably the hardest part of the entire exercise. It literally was. So that was pretty fun. And these are just some more pictures of the same thing. They flew B-52s out there also. We had some submarines playing also. Other exercises I plan, again, just to give you an idea of what the Navy's doing when we're not actually involved in conflict, right? We're probably training for it. We're probably doing that with allies, right? Every one of these is an allied exercise. Full Eagles with Korea, Annulex is Japanese, Keen Sword is Japanese, Challenge and Sabres Australia, Terminal Fury Australia, Carrots Thailand, Cobra Goals Thailand. I guess I had Terminal Fury. Oh, I don't know if this is going to work. Maybe it'll work. Let's see. Oh, it's gonna work. So this is the Kitty Hawk. The helicopter on the bow had literally walked off of about 10 minutes prior to this. So this is in a typhoon off of Tokyo one. Actually, this is right off of Tokyo. So this is 90,000 tons of diplomacy, right? Pitching, about 100 feet up and down. So Peggy had dropped me off at the airfield because I was flying out with the battle group commander. And we knew the weather was bad, but I think she took a picture because she thought she might never see me again. So,
well, you told me I'm with the Admiral, I'll be okay.
Yeah.
Did that helicopter survive on the front there?
Yeah. They'll just wash it down with fresh water.
Because the salt will cause rust, right?
Yeah. So they'll have to wash it down with fresh water.
No.
Yeah.
So he sent me that afterwards. I was like, I told you it wasn't. We're gonna die.
Yeah,
But what happens to submarines during the typhoon?
nothing.
Nothing down there? Oh.
No, we'll roll. I've rolled 30. Well, I've rolled probably 20 degrees at 150 feet. But nothing like that. Just some fun Japanese pictures. Right there's some. The second time. Okay. Mount Fuji. We climbed Mount Fuji. This is Nagasaki. No, Hiroshima. Hiroshima. Yeah. So we went to the Peace Museum in Hiroshima. We actually drove there from Tokyo, so it's kind of a bit of a road trip for us. And then my last time was with Carrier Strike Force Training Pacific, so I've probably been on every aircraft carrier, in operation. Training them to do Carrier Strike Group operations. And that was our San Diego thing. So,
That's bad.
yes,
Did you see the latest movie of Midway?
yeah,
Did you like it?
I did. It seems like, from what I've read, it's fairly historically accurate. I didn't really have very much shore duty, Peggy reminds me. And what I did do for shore duty was usually not very good. I was the shift engineer at the S5G prototype for about 1.5 years, and then we went to the Naval War College for about 8 months. Then our longest shore duty was in Strategic Command. So I was part of it's a joint command, so I was part of the Navy element at this Air Force base, which is really uncomfortable, and I don't ever want to do it again, kind of thing. And then I was the executive officer at the ROTC unit at Miami University for a while. So, yeah. So, yeah, just interesting things, right? We moved 18 times. I did miss the birth of our oldest daughter. 1 year I flew 160,000 miles. Right? That was exercise planning.
Right. Yeah, I just saw that you lost 6 friends and shipmates. Was that accidents on ships?
Yeah, usually, yeah.
So it's a dangerous sign.
Yeah, that was really bad.
What's an open ocean swim call?
So we would surface the ship in the middle of the ocean and go swimming.
Like forced to? Or-
No,
No, it's I didn't have to, oh, I don't-
go swim.
Well,
No.
and they post guys with guns to shoot the sharks.
Yeah, if they're-
Oh, that's true. I could, oh, sure.
but if you want to feel small and insignificant, swim in the open ocean in 6,000 fathoms of water, right? You'll feel small and watching the ship, slowly away.
So a total of 7 or 14 different times landing on the aircraft carrier and a jet.
14. Yeah, so the whole Top Gun thing, I've been lucky enough to do that quite a bit. Few days without a shower. 2 weeks, I'm
I
sorry.
was gonna say 2 days,
Two
it's
weeks.
14.
2 weeks, 2 weeks. The longest time we were submerged without surfacing was 90 days. Yeah, that's when we started to run out of food. So 11,236 days. That's it.
Just a high standard.
I hope that was interesting. Worth your time on a Saturday evening.
Yes.
To go do. Yeah, any questions?
So this may sound really weird. We've been diving before, so we're under there, but how far down do you guys travel?
So I can't tell you,
Okay.
right? But it's deeper than 400 feet.
Told you I was gonna ask this question.
And she's never been 400 feet with a scuba tank either.
Most people.
I have done this to Bruce. Get up here.
You ever hit a well?
Very well.
You can't tell.
I don't know. We think we may have. I don't know.
The well wouldn't have felt it, would it?
Oh, we're much bigger than the whale.
I know, it's like, it'd be like a butterfly hitting your windshield.
Yeah, and yeah. I mean, we would certainly hear, the ocean's not quiet. So we would certainly hear a lot of whales. Funny story, we were on a mission in a fairly significant place, and I was on the scope and sonar calls out, gunfire behind us. I turn around quickly and there's nothing there, right? So I keep doing my thing. They say, "How far behind?" I turn around real quickly and there's a whale that's flapping its flipper on the bottom. I thought it sounded like a gun, but
That's really.
Can you speak to nuclear launch protocols, launch codes, or those kinds of interesting things?
yeah, what would you like?
How does it work?
How does it work? So if the decision, so your SSBN is in 100% communications all the time via a very low frequency radio system. Right? So which essentially means it's a ground wave that's several miles long that's traveling the surface of the earth. So if there's a decision made to launch, right, then you're going to receive a message from the National Command Authority, right? That's going to give you a target, right? Essentially a launch package, right? Or something like that. And then there'll be sealed authenticators, right? So two people have to authenticate the validity of the message using the sealed authenticators. Two commissioned officers have to do that. If they do that, then they present it to both the CO and the XO, who have to agree that it's an authentic message. And it's given to the weapons officer, and he's going to go down and essentially align the missiles, right? Yeah. Then you're going to figure out what the launch window is. Do that.
Were you ever close to having to do that?
No, that's because it works, right? Nobody wants to do that. Now we practice it a lot. I've had my finger on the trigger.
Do you have any recommendations for movies that might be a good representation of submarine life or warfare?
In which era, right? In Second World War, Das Boot, right? Other movies like that are pretty true to life. You know, Hunt for Red October is okay, right? But it's cinema. You know, they do have actual Navy submarine guys in it, right? The guy who says possible target zig, right? That's a Navy guy. So I mean, it's okay. I don't know. See one of the digs against the submarine forces, the aviators would say ASW stands for awfully slow warfare, because it is, right? It's a chess game, right? It's you know what I mean. It's not Top Gun Maverick. So I don't know that there are a lot of good modern, submarine movies. I don't want to spoil it for you, but they're all entertaining. Okay.
You ever been to the polar caps?
I haven't. That was one thing I didn't get to do. Anything else?
So can you be called back up now that you're retired?
No, they're not that desperate.
Well, thank you. That was awesome.
Wow.
That was awesome. So my question to you is, do we try and pull off some more of these? How frequently would you like to see something? We have a lot of activities come up through the latter part of the year, this last quarter, between our Halloween party or whatever they call it, fall harvest festival, whatever. And Christmas and Thanksgiving stuck in between. How frequently would you like to try and see something like this?
Like twice a week is too much.
Bit much. Bit much.
Once a month.
Once a quarter.
I think once a quarter.
Once a quarter? Well, I mean, for me, I would love it once a month.
Yeah.
If we do it once a quarter, we might have people passing away. We never get those kids.
Don't give us the bad on it. Come on.
I was in a ward one time that did these in the elders quorum meeting once a month on the fifth Sunday, something like that.
We don't get fifth Sundays. They're always used other ways, and we're directed on what we're supposed to do. So I think we'll keep them as activities. like this, extracurricular activities.
I like the fact they're joint, you know, they're both, anybody.
Yeah.
So,
And that's what we want to grow it. So we'll, next time we have a presidency meeting this week, next week. Maybe we'll look at the calendar and kind of see when we can squeeze the next one in. And kind of get it in the works so we can promote it. But I think it'll be really fun. I love learning about this kind of stuff. And I don't think the bar's been set too high to where we can't have others measure up. Although Russ is a tough one to stand up to for sure.